Thank you so much, Sean, for inviting me to come. I have looked for a platform to discuss this and have been, perhaps because it's a bit challenging a concept, I've not really had an opportunity. So, Sean, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to talk about this. One of the things I wasn't quite sure how to come into the conversation, and I also had an article accepted by the Architecture New York State magazine to relate it to the same topic. And it actually was released today, which I was like, okay, that's perfect because the theme for the magazine is challenging the perception of the profession. And I think my question is probably doing exactly that. Architects professionally bound to require electrification. So I have been told that this is a very novel approach to how to ban gas. Heard a lot of things. Thank you, Dr. Nora Estrom, for your discussion. I will bring it actually in. It's great. You gave me a little bit more material to talk about um, because it is relevant. So, are architects professionally bound to require electrification? So, let's go to the obvious NCARB. So, NCARB says very clearly protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. They are architectural licensing board. They facilitate the licensure and credentialing of architects. Very clear, very specific. In a previous lifetime, I was a professional chef. I ran restaurants, I cooked. Sometimes I was doing everything, managing restaurants. Restaurants are crazy. Anyone's ever worked in a restaurant, you know, it doesn't matter what role you have played, craziness. I have stories to tell. Oh, I have stories to tell. But it was many times my staff would be overwhelmed. Too many people, not enough food, just things weren't going right. And they would all start to panic. And I'd be calm, be calm. I would always say the same thing. We're not saving lives here. I said, unless the food is poisoned or it's spoiled, we're all good. Just talk to people. It's fine. And even when disasters happen in my restaurants, when I go out and talk to people, I'd even say, comp your meal, you can leave. They always stayed. I had this uncanny way of keeping people to stay. Sometimes when I really wanted the restaurant to be a little bit more empty, it didn't happen. But again, we weren't saving lives here. We were serving food. And unless, again, it was spoiled or poisoned, which we never did, then we weren't in danger of doing anything bad to the public. However, NCARB is a whole nother story. So in studying, and I'd like to say I am an architect. Technically, I'm not supposed to say that because I'm actually not licensed. Even though I worked in it for over 20 years, I know this inside and out. I just haven't passed what I need to. So let's talk about that for a second. In order to be a licensed architect or even get to the point of being able to take the tests, you go to school. You go through a lot of school. We were known for sleeping overnight in our buildings just because we worked so hard on everything that we did, and this was absolutely true. Put in a lot of hours. Then when we were trying to get licensed, we had to go through what's called IDP, which is basically kind of like an internship program, spending more time and in different categories. You can't just do one thing. It has to be spread out. You have to have a licensed architect who pays attention to you. And then you start to take tests. And of course, our tests keep changing, how many we have, when we have to take them and go back and forth. It's a process. It's not one test, it's many tests. It's gone from a couple of days sitting at a desk to 9 to now I think it's down to 6. Doesn't make the material any less difficult. So there's a lot to becoming a licensed architect. So by the time you get there, you are excited, you are happy, and then you have this where you're told protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. We take it seriously. This is unlike the other one where we said, no one's going to die here. This one, people could die. You are responsible for their lives. You are responsible for their safety. You are responsible for their health. So when I used to do career day, I used to walk in, I used to ask the kids, what is the one thing a building cannot do? And they'd all go, oh, it has to like let people in or it has to look nice. And I go, no, no, no. I said, bottom line, building can't fall down. They'd all go, ha, ha, ha. That's so funny. That's cute. I realize now that if I were to walk in, I don't know if that's either the right answer or even if that's the only answer because the building maybe didn't fall down, but am I inside of it? Am I being subjected to something that's actually going to harm me? And a licensed architect built this. So maybe that question, the answer needs to change. So this is, I met the chef at the Hotel Marcel. It's the first passive house certified hotel in the US, fully electric. They took us through it. And I told you, I was a professional chef. And they talked about what she does and how she does it. And one of the things they brought up, two things they brought up, was one, that they changed their menu because it was all induction uh, stoves. I said, that's interesting. And then they talked about how, and I asked the question, having worked in this environment, is it cooler in there? Because this is what I've heard from people. It's like, oh, it feels so much better. And the gentleman who's sort of cut off in my picture on the right said, no, 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 there's no difference. Okay. I'm the first one to tell you when they start to turn on all of those burners at the same time, it is hot in there. This is why she has a handkerchief over her head, why we all did, because it's hot and we are not cool. So we're smelling the gas. Well, quite honestly, the ventilation in the kitchen is far better than anything that you find in your home. But still, it is hot, it is going on, and she changed it. So I get why, when we say ban gas, that the restaurant industry went, well, we're not having that. Because like myself, I like to cook the way I always have. I'm used to the way I've done it. Also, quite honestly, you can't use all the professional pans that you have on induction stoves. They don't work. I have all this stainless steel, this beautiful copper, and it doesn't work. I'd have to modify it. And then also, and I hate to be so petty, but I like to flame char my tortilla. And I don't know how you do that on induction oven. The reality is you can't. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't. It just means I can't do that. So right now, internally, the restaurant industry is working really hard, but they were the ones kind of stepped in that we're not banning gas. Okay. So the next slide is very, very crowded for a very, very good reason. It is crowded because that's how many risks we bring into our internal environment when we, our interior environment, maybe both, when we turn on the burner. And so it's noxious gas that's emitted right away. You see all those, I'm not even going to try to say it because there's too many of them. And when it's that complicated, you should be concerned, right? But the health is an obvious impact. Premature mortality, heart disease, stroke, asthma, increased risk of illness, COPD, premature death, and actually premature death and premature birth, respiratory infection, all of this hits some of the population harder than others. Children, older people, pregnant, people who already are compromised in one way or another. And then something we don't always talk about is it's an equity issue. There are buildings that have gas in them. If they even have a vent, a fan, pull it out. It's probably just recirculating. It's actually probably not pulling it out. It might just be moving it around in the room. So they're still breathing it. A lot of times there is no fan or vent and they're opening a window, which may or not be working. And usually they're not even well ventilated. They're small, they're crowded. So whatever problems that gas has, and we've seen a lot of them, it is compounded. And that is unacceptable. So since we know all that, City of Berkeley, congratulations, City of Berkeley and 80 California cities, try to pass an ordinance that said we're going to ban gas inside of newly constructed buildings. And actually, if I could edit this slide, or take out the word natural because I don't think anything's natural about gas. We should just say gas, period. Anyways, they tried to pass it in 2019. And of course, as soon as they did, yes, congratulations to Berkeley. I was so proud of you guys. I said, yes, if they can do it, we can do it. Yeah. And they tried to pass it. And so then also in New York City, they passed Local Law 154 that requires all electric new buildings. Washington State said, I'm going to jump in there too. I'm going to throw out my building code, which thank you, Dr. Esram, you talked about building code. And then 4 years later, what happens? The ban is struck down by the Ninth Circuit Appeals Court. And Berkeley goes, okay, why? Because the restaurant industry stepped in, the California Restaurant Association, and said, oh, no, 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 no. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do what she's doing. We're going to be able to flame char our tortilla, and we're not going to change our menu. And this is what we're used to, and this is what we're going to do. Obviously, they forgot about this slide that we have a lot of health issues. Okay, so Berkeley tries to appeal it, and what happens? It's thrown out. New York State, with all of its amazing legal prowess, passes the All Electric Buildings Act. And this one comes in a different, so, sometimes these acts have to come in kind of slowly, right? We only have certain buildings, a certain height, a certain time, you phase it in, people kind of get used to it. Maybe they picked under 7 stories because they have less legal teams. The bigger high rises and the super talls in New York maybe would have had a better legal come at them faster. Anyways, be that as it may, they pass it. And then, of course, and we all sort of wait, and then they get challenged in court. We knew a legal challenge was coming. But however, this time it was upheld by the U.S. Appeals for the Second Court. And it was in favor of New York State and New York City. And in San Francisco, they passed a ban. It does not cover what the one in New York City or New York State was doing, but still there is something, and so far they have not, that I'm aware of, been challenged. What I didn't realize, thank you, Dr. Nora Estrom, is that they also paused on the New York State All Electric Buildings Act because of pushback again. So all of that, what does that mean? What that means is I am now talking to the licensed architects out there, and I'm saying, are we up to the challenge? Because we are seeing that while the building codes are trying to change, that the legal is working overtime, the legislative is putting out policy and trying to change to ban gas and make it all electric. Honestly, it's not really working. I think that we need to support them in another way, which is why this is novel. So we've taken this approach. It is problematical. It is moving very slowly. It is not really getting the full electrification and taking out gas the way we know that we need to. So when I talked about I was a professional chef, I become sort of this split personality. Part of me goes, I'm not giving up my gas. I want to charbroil that tortilla, and my pans don't work, and this is what I'm used to. And who do they think they are to take away my gas? And then the other half of me, who also works as an energy manager and as a owner of a firm that looks at what the future is, says, but wait a minute, we know gas is how bad it is for you. You can't keep putting it in there. Who wins? So I say banning the gas has to win. So, but I'm not alone. And this is not just me saying that I have to do this. If you look at the AIA Strategic Plan 2021 to 2025, inspire and empower architects to improve society and transform the world with the goal of climate action for human and ecological, that word again, health. Now we have another one, 2026 to 2030. Elevating architects as visible, influential decision makers shaping policy, investments, and outcomes that affect communities. Outcome means that we should ban gas. We've all agreed. Outcomes affects communities, part of that plan. And then we have NCARB, who's licensing these architects, it states one more time, to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. So if you add all that up, we have a major disconnect here. This is a schism that we cannot just walk past. So the ability to account for our actions, accountability, is something that we need to do. So instead of looking only at building codes, and I want them to move forward, and I agree that they're going back and forth. Sometimes they're being weakened right now when they were stronger before. I'd have to put a quick shout out to Ashley. I think you're a little marching hero out there because you seem to understand how to get to where you're going. And I applaud that. But let's go back to licensed architects. So what can we do? So one of the things is we can actually decline to bid on projects that require fossil fuel. Say, oh, you're bringing that in? I'm not going to work on that. Given all of this, an understanding that emergency generators is the very hardest thing to solve in this sort of electrification sentence. It's a period that I have a very hard time solving. Some have done it very novelly, but usually it's very niche and it's not usually broadly applied. So anyways, we can decline to bid on projects that require fossil fuel. We can also refuse to participate on a project that includes fossil fuels. And then if we're in one and they promised it would be all electric, and it turns out, oh, I don't know, for return on investment or, understand that gas is cheaper. Not sure that that's still a winning argument anymore, but that is cheaper. You understand it. And I would have to say no. Then if you're going to switch to fossil fuel on this project when we had agreed to be fully electric, then I'm going to pull out of the project. Now, I'm sure the article that I wrote in the magazine and presenting here, there are people who are going, really? How does that work? So let's start with the easy one. So how do we self-regulate this? What would that look like within our profession? One of them is personal responsibility. I know that gas is unhealthy and it needs to not be in my projects because I want to support the oath that I just gave to protect, right? Public health. How would NCARB look at it? Would it be mandatory? Would they enforce it? They're saying it. I'm saying there's a disconnect. We keep taking projects that do this. We're in total opposition of what you're saying is we should do. How does that work? Then what would be the legal basis for this? You're in a project and you pull out. There are ramifications that go beyond just well, I can't do that for health reasons. It starts to become contractual. There's legal parts in there. There's financial considerations. I get it. A lot of what I'm talking about is a discussion. We need to open up the discussion because we are actually not fulfilling what we're supposed to do. And we need to be able to make some kind of adjustment, some kind of alignment of what it is we're tasked to do and what it is that we're doing. And right now we don't do that. So what would be the professional response? I don't know. We have to open up for discussion. This is not I'm going to give you answers. We're going to talk about it. I need all the architects in the room to walk through that same threshold with me and say, okay, all of us are going to walk through it because we're all faced with the same thing. How are we going to handle this? And would it be maybe a condition for membership in the AIA? They just made it very clear that we are supposed to be out there and we're supposed to be promoting, we're supposed to take care of community. How do we do that if we do continue to take projects that do fossil fuel? So, and the last one, I want to talk a little bit about sort of how architects have been looked at through history. We have typically been counsels to royalty and to leadership and to how cities are shaped. They come to us for leadership, and that is really important. And it's baked into our DNA to be a part of that holistic sense of what it is that we're presenting. We understand all the pieces because that is how we're trained to do. We're supposed to know at least enough about everything to know how everything works without having to know everything about everything. Even though sometimes I feel like I'm still supposed to know everything about everything. But we already are trained. It's in our DNA to be holistic, to be that big picture and understand how the details fit into that. This is what architects do. If we're to meet the demands of a world that's changing rapidly, and to be resilient, we need to step up and be a part of that. We see our other agencies around us, the building codes, the legal, the legislative, trying to make this happen to ban gas. But maybe we are one more player that needs to be in there and says, okay, we're going to support you. We are not going to take any more gas projects. Is that huge? That is huge. Is that got financial impact? Yes, it does. So one of the things that I wanted to say is that it requires the hardest thing of all, is that personal responsibility. I have decided, and I've done this in other things, I'm not going to do that anymore. So if you bring me a project that has gas in it or changes to something that's fossil fuel based, and again, I'll leave emergency generators off to the side because they're so problematical, but they're a small period in this bigger one. I'm not going to take it. So what is the final sentence that I want to say is, if the project includes fossil fuels, we do not take the project, period. That is, should be a professional stance that aligns with what NCARB is asking of us, and that is really what society at this point needs. Thank you. And then the last little line in there is one called, in fun fact, no one ever asked me what AOB stands for. I put it on the first slide, but I've gone through so many places and put it on there when I don't tell what it is, and nobody ever asks me, which I'm finding very amusing. I would have asked.
But
I
what
would have
is it
asked.
then?
It means action-oriented visionary.
Ooh, I like that.
So what
That's
I
like,
say is that my head is in the clouds, but my feet are firmly planted into the ground, which means that I know how this sounds. I know how this can impact you. I worked on projects myself. I was a senior project manager for architectural firms. I get it. At the same time, at some point, you have to stop and say, no, we're just not going to do that anymore. And also this, and there's a legal actually mechanism. You are a licensed architect, and that license comes with that requirement. So they both don't live in the same world. What are you going to do?